The night began with a silence that felt heavier than noise, the kind that settles into a person's chest when hope has been stretched thin for too long. The diner lights flickered against the rain-streaked windows, and every drop that slid down the glass felt like another second of Leah's life slipping away. She tied her apron a little tighter, smoothing the wrinkles with tired hands, reminding herself that she only needed to make it through this shift. Just one more night of smiling when her heart felt hollow, of carrying plates heavier than her worries, of pretending that exhaustion wasn't slowly carving lines into her face. Somewhere across town, her son was asleep in a borrowed bed, and everything she did in that moment was for him. Leah had not imagined her life this way. There had been dreams once, simple ones, like owning a small home with a creaky porch and a dog that barked at nothing, or going back to school when things felt stable. But stability had never stayed long. Her husband had left when their son was barely old enough to speak, vanishing into excuses and silence, leaving behind unpaid bills and a goodbye that never came. Since then, Leah had learned to measure life in shifts and tips, in how many hours she could trade for just enough money to survive another week. Some nights were better than others, but most were a careful balancing act between hope and fear. That evening, the diner was unusually quiet, the kind of quiet that made Leah nervous. Fewer customers meant fewer tips, and fewer tips meant another calculation at the kitchen table later, deciding which bill could wait and which couldn't. When the door opened and a man stepped inside, she barely looked up at first. He was dressed simply, almost forgettably, in a dark coat, damp from the rain. There was nothing about him that screamed importance, nothing that hinted at the life he lived beyond that door. He chose a corner booth and sat alone, placing his phone face down on the table as if he wanted to disappear into the background. Leah approached with a practiced smile, the kind that didn't require energy anymore. She took his order, noticing how calm he seemed, how his eyes carried a tired depth that mirrored her own. He spoke politely, briefly, without demanding attention. As she walked back to the counter, she didn't think of him again as anything more than another customer passing through her night. She had learned not to expect surprises from people. Expectations, she knew, were dangerous things. The hours dragged on, measured by the sizzle of the grill and the hum of old refrigerators. Leah moved from table to table, refilling cups, clearing plates, nodding through half-heard conversations. The man in the corner ate slowly, thoughtfully, as if each bite carried meaning. When he finished, he placed his utensils neatly on the plate and stood without fanfare. Leah watched him walk to the register, pay his bill in cash, and nod once in thanks before heading toward the door. When she went to clear the table, she noticed something that made her heart sink. The tip line on the receipt was blank. No extra cash lay beside the plate, nothing. For a moment, Leah just stood there, staring at the empty space where a few dollars could have made the difference between gas in her car and walking to work the next day. The disappointment wasn't loud or dramatic. It was quiet, familiar, settling into her chest like an old ache. She told herself not to take it personally. People had their reasons. Still, the sting lingered, and she felt foolish for hoping otherwise. As she reached to lift the plate, something caught her eye. Beneath it, pressed flat against the table, was a folded piece of paper. Her first thought was that it might be trash, something forgotten, but the way it was placed felt deliberate. With cautious fingers, she unfolded it, expecting perhaps a note or a complaint. What she saw instead made her breath catch. It was a check, a real one, with a number that made no sense at first. She read it again, then again, her mind refusing to accept what her eyes were seeing. The amount was more than she made in a year, more than she had ever held in her hands. For a second, the diner seemed to tilt, the sounds fading into a distant hum. Her hands trembled, and she had to grip the edge of the table to steady herself. Confusion rushed in first, followed by disbelief. Why would someone do this? Why hide it under a plate, leaving behind the appearance of nothing at all? As she turned the paper over, she saw a short message written in careful ink. It spoke of seeing her strength, of recognizing the quiet courage it took to show up every day for someone who depended on her. It said that sometimes the world tests us not to break us, but to reveal how much we can carry. It ended with a simple encouragement to keep going. Leah felt tears blur her vision, hot and sudden. She thought of the nights she had cried silently in her car so her son wouldn't hear, of the mornings she had forced herself to smile through bone-deep exhaustion. She thought of all the times she had felt invisible, like her struggle existed only to her. And now, somehow, someone had seen her. The manager confirmed the check was real, and as the reality settled in, Leah felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just relief, though that washed over her like a warm tide. It was a feeling she hadn't allowed herself in years. Possibility? With that single act, the man had done more than give her money. He had given her permission to imagine a future again. In the days that followed, Leah's life began to change in ways both big and small. She paid off overdue bills and fixed the car that had been threatening to give up on her. She moved her son into a small apartment of their own. Nothing fancy, but theirs. She enrolled in evening classes, something she had always promised herself she would do when the time was right. And through it all, she carried the memory of that folded paper, tucked safely in a drawer like a reminder that kindness could arrive quietly, without warning. But the transformation wasn't only external. Something inside Leah softened and strengthened at the same time. She began to see her own worth, not just as a mother scraping by, but as a woman capable of building something better. She started volunteering at the diner on her days off, helping other single parents find resources and support. She listened to their stories with empathy born of experience, offering not solutions, but understanding. Months later, Leah would sometimes think of the man from the corner booth. She never learned his name, never saw him again. She later discovered through a passing news story that he was a billionaire known for his quiet generosity, someone who believed that the most powerful gifts were those given without applause. But in her heart, he was simply a stranger who had changed everything by choosing to see her. The diner no longer felt like a place of desperation, but a chapter in her story, one she carried with pride rather than shame. She still worked hard, still faced challenges, but the weight felt different now. It was no longer crushing, it was purposeful. Her son laughed more, slept easier, and looked at her with a trust that made every sacrifice worth it. Leah understood then that redemption doesn't always come from fixing the past. Sometimes it comes from being given a chance to write the future differently. And sometimes, the smallest seeming moments hold the power to alter the course of a life. A plate lifted, a paper revealed, a belief restored. As she stood one evening watching the rain fall outside her apartment window, Leah felt gratitude settle into her bones, not just for the money, but for the reminder that kindness exists even when the world feels cold. She promised herself that she would carry that kindness forward, that she would be the person who sees others when they feel unseen. And maybe that is the real message, hidden beneath the plate that night, that you never truly know the battle someone is fighting, or the impact a single act can have. That compassion, given quietly and sincerely, can ripple outward in ways we may never witness. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that hope can appear in unexpected places, take a moment to carry that feeling with you. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who might need to hear it today. Because sometimes, the smallest gestures can change everything, and the world becomes better each time we choose to be kind.